You've been watching the news for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Seemed like it.
Has your trust waned in the years?
No, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. I've never trusted. Keep up. Walter Cronkite, I didn't trust him.
What was untrustworthy back then?
The man. Yeah. So it was just everybody.
Were you a hippie?
Everybody that was over 30 was untrustworthy, and now we're all over 30.
Were you a hippie?
Yeah, I was on the edge. Because of Dad's business as a pastor and being in a small town, we sort of modified our behavior a little bit. But yeah, the attitude and the kind of rebellious attitude.
So proper pastor's kid.
Have we rolled into conspiracy theories?
I was about to say, you ready to put on your tinfoil hats on that one?
We're getting closer.
Did you ever trust our lawmakers then?
Remember with when the Obamacare bill was passed, the infamous quote, we have to vote on it, then we can read it. I'm like, did you say that out loud, really? One of my biggest complaints with Congress has always been like,
hey, hit that like and subscribe button. Helps a ton.
Oh, that's too demanding.
Too demanding? All right, you want something
Please,
subtle.
sir, if you would, please hit us that like and subscribe.
There's a few ways.
a few ways you can go with that.
Oh. What was that Bible verse?
James 1:19. I saw it up on the screen. Yeah, it's still up there.
Let every person be quick to hear and slow to speak, slow to anger.
I think the next one says, for the anger of man does not work the righteousness of God. Something like that. Doesn't say you can't get angry.
Well, it says be angry and sin not.
Yeah, it just says be slow to get there.
Yeah.
Take your time getting there. Slow boil.
You said that's all over. That's in every.
I think either that one or the other one is Ephesians 4:29. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up, that it may benefit those who listen.
Where does that put this podcast?
In the crosshairs, I think.
In a good way or a bad way?
Yeah, in a good way. Being in the crosshairs is good.
Okay.
Keeps you. If you're cooking on a stove, you want the pot in the crosshairs of the burner. That's where it heats the best. So
Yeah. How's it going there?
It's going pretty good. Yeah. Doing all right.
Good. So how come that's everywhere in your house then?
Just because it's a good challenge verse for me. I've not really had a reputation of being slow to speak in my lifetime. I'm usually
People say which one? The slow to speak or the?
the slow to speak is a hard one for me. I guess not long after we had gotten married, Denise and I, in the course of working out how to disagree, Denise would ask me a question and I would answer her like almost that fast. And as we were working out how do we make communication work better, she said, well, I ask you questions and you don't even think, you just answer. Like, no, I thought of the answer and I answered it.
Is it the right answer? Or
said, and what we discovered is that she picked up on this, and a couple of people that we were working with, the counselor we were working with, said Mark processes things very quickly in his mind. If you give him a series of facts or questions or something like that, he gets to the answer really quickly. And Denise will get to the same answer, but it'll take her just a little bit longer. And I said, well, my dad was that way. Because Dad and I were talking, especially when we were adults, I guess is when I noticed it the most, is we'd be working on a problem, and I'm like, I know what we need to do, and it would take Dad a little while to get there. And it wasn't that he wasn't slow intellectually, he just worked through everything. And so Denise said she finally figured out that it wasn't that I wasn't paying attention to her question, I just processed through it really quickly. And so the thing I had to learn to do is go, I know the answer. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, give it a second there, so that it looks more like,
you're taking it seriously.
Yeah, which is not, I wasn't being fraudulent. I still got to the same answer. And occasionally,
did you ever shift the answer? Like, well, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say,
maybe.
To be honest, there were probably a few times that 5-second count let me modify that answer a little bit because.
Like, was it a political modification?
No, not usually. Sometimes it was. Sometimes
I'm right, but that might not be the best way to put it.
Which is the better situation? Which is the better way to handle this? The choice between two good right answers. So sometimes.
My father-in-law tried measuring his words one time on the side of the road with a cop, and the cop goes, "You're lying."
Oh, that's interesting.
I was like, "Well, darn, I tried."
Yeah, so that reminder to be slow to speak was always good for me, and it was good for me with the kids sometimes when they were growing up too, because I would, yeah, you're smarter than your kids are, just because you've accumulated some experience, but sometimes they just need to work through things. You have to give them a little, maybe not smarter. You have more experience than they do.
Well, it's ignorance and experience, is what it is. Ignorance doesn't mean stupidity. It just means lack of knowledge. So.
And like
They're just unaware of things, but that doesn't mean they're not smart.
Yeah,
they're smart.
Like, well, how do you think we should solve this problem? It would just seem to work better because that's one of my math teacher friends told me that. He said that's why math teachers answer questions with questions is they want you to think and work through to get to the answer.
Oh, I used to hate that.
Yeah.
I'd be like, come on, let's just the Socratic method.
That was the version of like, I can't spell this word. Look it up in the dictionary. But I can't spell it. I said, I looked all through the L's and couldn't find elephant anywhere, so like that. I never understood it. Look it up in the dictionary part.
Yeah.
And, don't even get me started on pneumonia, so.
Yeah.
So,
what I didn't like was having to show your work.
yeah.
I got the right answer. Why do I have to show you how I got there?
Yeah.
How does that work as a homeschooler?
I get to ask my mother.
Yeah, but I mean,
I blocked a few things out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wondered that. I used to tease the kids in the youth group that were homeschooled. I said, whenever I got bad grades, I'd always tell my parents, my teachers don't like me. How does that work in homeschool? That seems like that's kind of going to be an awkward situation. I should turn this off. There we go.
Spelling was the only subject I ever cheated at.
How can you cheat at spelling?
By going back into the back room with the teacher's book and writing down the answers.
Oh, gotcha.
And intentionally misspelling a couple. So
Yes, it can't be perfect, right?
She didn't cotton on to it. Yeah.
I had a teacher accuse me of cheating in school on spelling test one time. Man, we were sophomores. And I'm not a big guy now, but when I was a sophomore in high school, I was about half this size. I was the last guy picked for the chess team. I was so small, So, the girl that sat in front of me was large. She was big. She eventually threw shot put in the Olympics while she was in college. I mean, she was a big girl, and I got accused of. She and I both misspelled the word the same way, and so the teacher was sure that I'd somehow copied her. I'm like. When I sit behind her, I can barely see the front of the room. How am I going to see her paper?
Yeah.
But
saw the other day, I think it's Trent Reznor's daughter was throwing shot put and doing quite a good job.
Who is Trent Reznor?
I think he's a Nine Inch Nails singer.
Is it?
But I think his daughter was throwing shot put. Anyway,
interesting sport. Who came up with that sport?
the Greeks.
How far can you throw this ball?
Yeah, this heavy
ball.
Was it lead or was it?
I don't know what it was made. I guess with the Greeks, it would have to have been.
You get lead poisoning.
Yeah.
From shot put.
Just don't lick your fingers after you.
Yeah. Well, they were putting lead in the wine too to sweeten it. So, maybe that's why Rome fell.
Too much lead in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Could be.
The wine. Too much lead in the wine.
Too much lead in the wine.
I threw the shot put in high school.
Did you?
Yeah.
How was that?
And the javelin.
The javelin.
Oh, that was fun.
You're immediately disqualified if you spear someone.
So on the javelin catching team for our school. I was great at it for a while.
Yeah, you got to show us the
you're
scar.
good. You're good one time. How that works? So,
Yeah.
So wrong.
What about the slow to anger part of that?
Slow to anger. I'm probably much better at that now than I used to be. There was always a debate in my brothers and I growing up over: is it better to get angry fast and get over it, or get angry slow? Just like
Let it linger,
and then all of a sudden blow up. The straw that broke the camel's back kind of guy. Which is better? I've actually worked for bosses that were on both extremes of that. One of them would just get mad right off the bat, and then one of them he would blow up on Thursday, and it'd been slowly building all week, kind of a thing.
But that's not good leadership.
That's not-
like if you're
yeah.
allowing something to fester for that long.
Yeah, I was always the kind I'd rather get mad right away and deal with the conflict and resolve it and then move on to what's next.
I think that's more predictable too. Like you know how to navigate that individual better and be more productive.
Yeah. But I try not to. I guess by the time I was in my mid to late 20s, I think I had pretty much figured out that getting angry didn't really accomplish much in my life. So I needed to find a way to. If something bothered me enough to make me angry, to stop and look and say, like, is there something there I can control and change? Mm-hmm. And if so, what? And if not, then why am I wasting the energy on being angry about it? Yeah.
So what do you do with that? Then?
I guess some of it's situational. If it's something I can't control, then I have to look at, okay, what's the environment? I think, what's the environment I'm in that causes that? Yeah, there may be places or people I just need to not be at if I'm getting mad all the time. Like, I don't think I would have been a good parent at Little League ball games when other parents started yelling at their kids, because I would tend to get angry at those parents for yelling. Let your kids play. Okay, they got a coach. Okay, and granted, he's an insurance salesman during the week, but he's volunteering time. Let him coach your kids. And I would get mad at those parents, and I would think, okay, I just need to not be at this game because I'm not affecting anything positively by getting mad at them. So sometimes you just have to look at the environment of what's going on. And sometimes I think you just have to take a big slice of humble pie and step back and, A lot of times I found out I was the one that was wrong, and that was the source of anger. Nobody likes being wrong.
No.
So we didn't get angry. Sometimes I think anger was deflecting from having to admit that I was wrong. If I can get mad, make you back down, then I don't have to admit I was wrong. Not good marriage advice. That's not to get mad at your spouse because you're the one that was wrong. But
that seems to be like what most, at least in popular culture, what most marital arguments are.
It seems to be.
Or someone not wanting to admit that they're wrong.
Yeah. I've been reading a book. I got a book in the mail. I received a book. In the mail. A book I'd ordered, and it says he's talking about why we find it difficult to talk about our faith with people. And he says that in the opening chapter he talks about the fact that he had a fear of flying, and he says my fear of flying wasn't like I'm nervous and I take a Benadryl when I get on a plane. I was like, if you don't sedate me and put me out and load me on a stretcher, I'm not getting on the plane. He said he had a friend who tried to help him with that. He said, okay, what is it about flying that bothers you? Are you worried? Identify the specific part that's bothering you. Are you worried the wings are going to fall off? No. Are you worried the pilot's going to go to sleep? He says, it turns out it was a control issue. He said, because some guy I don't know is taking me someplace. I chose to go there, but I had no control over what's going on there. And he said, I had to learn, so then he took that illustration and talked about why sometimes we're afraid to talk about our faith. But, we're afraid. Well, what is it we're afraid of? We're afraid that people are going to make fun of us, or we're afraid that we might not know all the answers. So he identifies 8 or 9 different, typical things that people say when you ask them. I'm afraid that people ask me a question, I don't know the answer to it. And so it's just easier to not start the conversation. He goes, okay, but that doesn't really help, because it's okay if you don't know the answer. You just say, I don't know the answer to that. I'll get back with you.
That's hard for people to say.
Yeah, that's what I'd say. And so in this list of 8 or 9 different things, I read his introduction to it. And I read all the different chapter headings, and each one addresses a different fear. And I thought I'll just read through all of them. And
you know, like
which one is mine?
Yeah,
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting. I thought because to admit that you don't know the answers is a tough thing to do. And I guess particularly the more towards type A personality you bend, that's a little bit harder too because you're always going full speed and you don't want to stop. And
It gets easier when you practice it, though.
Yeah.
Because there's a certain amount of freedom in, like, you have a go-to answer. Like, I don't know the answer.
I don't know the answer. Yeah.
It's not
Yes.
something I'm versed in.
I like that answer, and I've used it a lot. I used it a lot when I was teaching classes. I would say, like, that's a good question. What do you think? Or I don't know. Let's go look it up. How about when we come back next week? I'll have looked that up and we'll find an answer and we'll try talking about it.
Yeah. Well, our little boy, our middle boy, he's like that, where he's got a million questions. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It gets to the point of, like, I don't know the answer. Like exasperation.
Yeah.
Because what are black holes made of? Lots of stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. It's all black.
No.
Can't they?
There's a lot of theories about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are tough questions. Why is the sky blue?
Well, that's refraction. But
That's what they say.
light. Yeah, that's what they say.
What they say.
That's what they say. They also say gravity's a thing, but
Yeah. It all turns into sound waves somewhere, doesn't it?
that
Wave theory.
apparently, when it gets small enough. But you got to hear Ben. Just scrolling the news.
Yeah,
You know anyone in Central Texas?
I actually have a nephew who lives in New Braunfels. He and his wife and kids. Several months ago, they had a bad flood down through. He's a manager of a Walmart distribution warehouse. And I just sent him a message. I said, yeah, check on you guys. How you doing? Because they'd moved to a new house. I didn't know where it was in relation to the floods. And he said their home was fine, but knowing the rains were coming, they'd gone in the warehouse and moved everything up on the pallets. If anything was on the floor, they moved up enough. He said we got about 3 or 4 inches of rain, ran across the floor, but nothing got hurt. So I wondered about that with this one. I haven't heard from him since I sent him a message. We're actually going to his dad, my brother's house, Saturday for a family get together. So I thought, well, I'll kind of check on him then, make sure they're doing all right.
Yeah.
Denise has got several friends down there that she knows through work. There's an association of county treasurers, and they have a computer chat group that they all kind of ask questions of each other on. And 2 or 3 of them that are in that area have posted comments about what's going on and people checking on them, stuff like that. But
Saw one YouTube video where a guy, his shop full of Ferraris got flooded.
oh,
It was like a working shop, so it was a bunch of customers, cars, and like, oof.
well, Denise and I were talking about that because I've seen several floods here in Nacogdoches, and
Where does it flood here?
it floods down the creeks, and then floods like Lanana Creek floods out and it floods out onto the soccer fields at SFA and Pecan Park. Those kind of catch the runoff there, low areas there. But when I was, I guess, mid-70s or so, on Pearl Street, there used to be houses on Pearl Street where that little park is with the tennis courts and everything down from the farmer's market, police station. There are houses in there. And there's a flood came through and just pushed several of those houses off of their, foundations. And they're on brick, pier and beam kind of things. And so that's when the city kind of figured out, okay, where are our floodplains? So they started moving businesses and houses out of those areas. Mm-hmm. So that one floods pretty good. And they did a lot of work on straightening Lanana Creek and Bonita Creek so that the water ran through town faster. And then when it gets south of town out towards the South Loop, it kind of starts spreading out into the fields a little bit. So it doesn't back up quite as bad. But I've even the last couple of floods we had here in town, I've seen the water from Lanana Creek back up so that the intersection of Maine and University's got 6 or 7 inches of water on it, and then when it drains off, it's all mud, in that intersection because all the sand and silt and stuff drops down. The building that Garth's in, that building is built on a much higher foundation than the first one that was built there.
Is it?
Because
it's a little built up.
It kept catching water coming out of the creek when it would flood up.
Yeah.
But that's Denise and I were talking about. We remember that they had just laid some new asphalt trails, walking trails, in the college area by the creek, and a flood came through and it picked up pieces of asphalt, not little pieces, but like pieces the size of this table.
Yeah.
Picked it up and moved them.
Yeah, water can do a lot of damage.
And we thought about it. Okay, if that's what a creek does, what would it be like if you had a full on river?
Yeah, well, there were bridges that are getting taken out.
Yeah, it was
in Central Texas and just like
scary to look at.
what's the death count up to?
was 101 was the last one I saw. I haven't actually looked at the news today, but it had gotten up over 100. But they were, still finding some folks.
Yeah. There were areas
as you were expect.
over 20 feet of water.
But there was we have the music minister at First Baptist in Marble Falls, which is in that same general area. Used to be our music pastor here at Oak Grove. And I sent a message to him to see how they're doing. And he said because they have a big gymnasium and stuff at their church, so they do a lot of, people shelter up there, and they collecting spot for people turning in supplies and stuff like that. And he said, that they had opened it up, but they had a couple of teenagers from their church that died in all this, that were camping down by the river. So that's pretty tough. Yeah, see, it's one of those, 6 degrees of separation. Everybody knows somebody knows somebody.
Yeah.
But I saw an interesting interview with a couple of interesting interviews with some of the sheriff and mayor and different people in the Kerrville area there, and they're getting tired because they've been going nonstop, and then they're starting to feel the kind of silly questions from people in the press.
So Ted Cruz was vacationing in Greece.
Yeah,
was he there though when the flood happened?
He was,
or did he leave town when the flood happened?
No, he was there when it happened. What he says, what his office says, the report I read said that he got a call on the 4th, which would have been after the flood, saying, and the soonest flight he could get home got him home either late Sunday or early Monday.
So why is it even a headline?
Because he's
Ted Cruz. He did it the last catastrophe.
Yeah, I know. When the
the implication is
happened, he went to Florida or something.
Yeah. The implication is that he left while the flood was going on and everything. Well, he was gone already on a planned family vacation, And that, if he had known it was going to rain and flood, would he have stayed? Maybe, I don't know. I mean, what was he going to do? He's not really a first responder type.
He's a federal senator.
Yeah. What was he going to do to help?
Technically don't do anything in the state anyway.
Yeah. But it's kind of like
I get the sentiment, but
it's like, I saw one of the guys ask the question, well, why weren't these camps, RV parks, different things, why weren't they evacuated if you knew this flood was coming? He goes, they asked a lady who owned one of the RV parks, she goes, so we get a flood every year, and unfortunately what happens is you sort of get numb to the alerts. Last time they did it, it was like a 3-inch rain, and we got a flood came up a foot, and everything was fine. So you don't pack up your whole house every time it rains, and then you get a really bad one.
When was the last time they had one like this in the area?
I think they said 98 maybe.
So that's a 30-year flood?
Yes, yeah. And then there was one seemed like 78, so it seemed like it was kind of a 20 to 30 year. But I remember other friends of mine that live down there in the Austin area, they talk about there's no place for the water to go when you get that hard rain. Mm-hmm. Saw an interesting graphic today. A guy said the amount of water that comes over Niagara Falls per second, he multiplied that up to how much in a day. Yeah. He said that the amount of rainfall in this area, in the watershed area there, was like twice what goes over Niagara Falls in a day, twice that volume in an hour. He said, and so he said, you think about, you hear about a 12-inch rain, you realize that's 12 inches in a 1-inch tube that they measured in.
Yes.
So it's like this inch and this inch and this inch, So a 12-foot square, now you're talking about a cubic foot of water. Mm-hmm. And if you're doing that over miles and acres.
And it's all run into the low areas.
And it's all going down the same place.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I always cringe when I see those videos, people driving across bridges with water on it, stuff like that, because I remember being driving an ambulance across a bridge that had a couple of inches of water running over it, and feeling it move. And it wasn't running real fast. And it wasn't a torrent by any means, but we were in a big heavy machine, so we had to get across it. Yeah. But you could feel it shift a little bit.
Do you have someone in back, or were you?
Yeah, we were coming back from out in the county. But
Could have taken you all away.
yeah, I was in the back holding on. A lot of praying in the back of an ambulance.
Yeah. So they were going after Trump today too because they were saying, or no, Pam Bondi, the some kind of sign off on FEMA stuff that like over a certain dollar amount, so they weren't able to get there fast enough, as if FEMA has a really good track record about getting there fast enough.
Yeah, it's just you're gonna find something to complain about.
Gotta make news.
I guess so. I guess that's it. The headlines and stuff. I just every now and then I'll show Denise a headline and pulls up on the internet or something like that. I say, look at the way they wrote this headline. This is just it's purely to make people mad. I saw one the other day. I told her, it said, Social Security recipients will not get paid in July. That was a headline.
Okay.
Well, when you read the article, it was because of where the 30th of June fell and the 1st of July fell and the holiday, it pushed it off a week because of the federal holiday. So it's not that you weren't getting paid, it's that they're getting paid a week later than normal, which would have been a much more accurate headline.
Yeah.
But if your sole source of income is Social Security, and with all the other stuff going on in the news, and you're like, wait, we're not going to get paid this month? That can't be good.
You click and you read the article.
You click and read the article, yeah.
Yeah.
And that has, I guess, I don't know exactly how those algorithms work, but I'm sure the term clickbait was not made up for no reasons.
Right. No. So you've been watching the news for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Seemed like it.
Has your trust waned in the years?
No, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. I've never trusted. I didn't trust keep up Walter Cronkite. I didn't trust him.
What was untrustworthy back then?
It was just, the man. Yeah. So it was just everybody.
Were you a hippie?
Everybody that was over 30 was untrustworthy, and now we're all over 30. So
were you a hippie?
Yeah, I was on the edge.
Like
we
we
were sort of
child.
My brothers and I were sort of probably more so me than them because of Dad's business as a pastor and being in a small town. We sort of modified our behavior a little bit, but yeah, the attitude and the kind of rebellious attitude was there.
So proper pastor's kid.
Yeah, we were the guy who came and spoke at our high school graduation was explaining to us why he had introduced a bill in Congress to reinstate the draft as we were all turning 18. We're like, who invited this guy? This is not what we want to hear. Wow.
Go to Vietnam.
Yeah. A lot of my classmates did. They graduated and they were in the last group of people that went over and stuff like that. But, so there was just kind of that whole coming out of the late 60s, distrust in government. And I don't know what caused that. I remember watching.
So was it founded in anything, or was it just being rebellious?
I think it was just part of it was just being rebellious and just, there's the anti-war sentiment, and now I can remember watching the news with my dad and him being upset when they would show, riots and stuff on campus, college campuses and stuff like that. And college kids and police squaring off against each other, stuff like that. I remember the shooting at Kent State when some of the college kids were killed during a protest and sit-ins and all that kind of stuff. So, I think that while I wasn't as rebellious as some of those guys were, plus I was much younger than that group of hippies were, or some younger. It's just that idea of just questioning, questioning everything. And then Mr. Nixon's little ordeal with the law and
which, by comparison to what's been going on these days, like it was like some guys that he didn't even tell to went and spied on the other side in a hotel or like, and then he, caught a bunch of flack over it compared to what's going on these days.
Yeah, that's just kind of wild. Have we rolled into conspiracy theories?
I was about to say, you ready to put on your tinfoil hats on that one?
We're getting closer, are we?
Did you see the Biden's the White House doctor was getting? He was in.
I heard he took the fifth a couple times today.
Like everything he's like any question they asked him, as far as I heard, was patient confidentiality and the fifth.
Yeah.
God.
Which I know. What did they think he was going to say? I mean, I guess that's one of my biggest complaints with Congress has always been like, you're having all these hearings about these things. You're supposed to be passing laws, Write laws, debate the laws, and pass the ones that are good, or modify them so they can't be.
Good.
But all this time that you're investigating all these things, we're going to have 18 different committees all looking into the same thing.
They got to earn that paycheck.
Yeah, that $100,000 or whatever.
171.
Is that what it is now?
Something like
the
that.
The official salary
for life.
Yeah, plus contacts, but plus the contacts they make. That whole thing. How do they all retire as millionaires if they're making $100,000 a year?
Yeah,
because by interpretation, if I make $50,000 a year, then I should have $500,000 when I retire. So.
If you don't spend any of it.
Yeah, that's probably the trick. Is not spending. No. But if your stamps are free and your car is free and your house is free, you ought to be able to save quite a bit of that.
I'm not sure those things are free.
They used to have a stamp allowance, and
probably. Yeah, but stamps like who uses
probably housing.
Like, that cuts like heavily into your household budget.
In your budget.
But I think they have to move to DC and they have to have a house there, and that all costs money. And
there's always
it's the insider trading. That's where they make the money.
Yeah, I think about that. Like even the local guys, like our state representatives, have an office in Nacogdoches, have an office in Lufkin, they have an office in Crockett, because they have to be available for the local constituency. So there's rent you have to pay somewhere.
Yeah, on the state level, every state varies, but I know there was a bunch of debates back in Minnesota about 10 years ago when we were up there, and they were basically it wasn't even covering the cost of living. I think they were making like 35 or 45 a year, and it wasn't covering.
Oh yeah, that would be
to just do the job.
You'd have to have a day job besides.
Yeah, I think they did have day jobs, but these are state.
What about in Texas? They only meet every other year. The House
other year.
Yeah, the Senate and House in Texas.
That's why it takes
the legislative part of it is at once every 2 years.
Is that why it takes so long to get anything done?
I guess. Well, plus then they spend the whole next year campaigning. So you work for a year, and then they get called back into special session all the time. So I think they spend a lot of the second year doing special session stuff, which they didn't get done when they were down there, supposed to be down there. But
maybe I should pay a little more attention to local politics.
Yeah. I don't know. Texas.
Have you guys heard of this app called Dub? It's a trading app that copies politicians' portfolios.
I read an article about it one time where you could kind of pick which politician you wanted to mirror their trade
stuff. Kind of like fantasy football, but you can make lots of money.
Right.
I read an article and I was because I was looking to see okay, what's the buy-in? You got an extra $500,000. What can help you?
Oh, like they have a game? Yeah, I don't think they have a game. You just follow their picks on your Robinhood or stock exchange of choice, I guess.
I mean,
I wonder if anyone's actually gotten wealthy doing that, though, like following Nancy Pelosi's picks.
I think so.
It'd be funny. It really, really would be funny if someone went after them for insider trading, like the SEC went after them for your insider trading. Like, I'm just doing what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Could be something.
Some folks are trying to pass a law to make it to where you're not allowed to buy and sell stocks while you're in
office.
Yeah,
there's a certain amount of that makes sense to me because even if you're not intentionally doing the insider trading stuff, you're still influencing the market by the decisions you're making. And so you have some pull there.
Also, it's quite tempting. Like,
if
a stock is going to be worth 5 times as much in 2 weeks, or 5 times less in 2 weeks.
Okay, I won't buy it, but I'm gonna call my brother-in-law and say, "Hey,
you might want to.
Are you still in charge of Dad's checkbook?"
Yeah,
That's But how do you I know they're supposed to. In theory, a lot of those guys they're supposed to divest themselves of interest in companies they own and stuff like that to try and help avoid some of that. But I'm like, I know it's a big deal with Mr. Trump that there's a big. How many of his businesses is he really fully divested in? When his kids are running them. So I don't know.
He's lost worth.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Those guys back in the original founding, they were like farmers and stuff like that. Most of them,
Well, they were wealthy. They were wealthier.
They were wealthy farmers. But But a lot of them are also. It's interesting in reading. I think something Ben said last time I was here. It's got me kind of going back and looking through some of those guys, and pulling out biographies and stuff on them, reading about them. A lot of those guys were young, like they were like y'all's age, and younger. Some of them, just like was having some pretty revolutionary, deep thoughts about how government should be set up.
What are you saying about Ben? Saying Ben has revolutionary thoughts?
Ben has some deep thoughts on how government should run. It involves tinfoil hats. And
yeah, Benjamin Franklin was 70. Everybody else was in their mid-20s.
Yeah.
A couple of them in their 30s and 40s, but...
and that's not to say that people in their 20s and 30s aren't smart now, but when you see pictures of those guys, the paintings and stuff, they all look like older guys. And I don't know if it's because of the frock coats and wigs and that kind of stuff.
General wear, probably.
Yeah. When you only live to be 40, Benjamin Franklin at 70 was kind of I would think it was kind of an anomaly to
Do you think people look younger these days than they did when you were growing up?
Look younger?
Yeah, like at the same age. Like, does a 30-year-old look the same?
I don't know. Everybody looks young to me. So.
Well, I will say the high schoolers, for some reason, I look at pictures from my time in high school and compare them, and I think they look a lot younger.
I think,
nowadays.
yeah. When I pass kids on the college campus, I'm like, is it junior hires in college?
Yeah.
Right.
So I think the general appearances they seem to look a little younger, and I don't know if that's a result of I don't know, better nutrition, maybe better something's different in their
and the water
in the water, less lead in the water.
I don't know. So too much
Better-
estrogen in the food supply.
Better air conditioning at home. They don't have sweat lines from.
Like, is it a good thing or a bad thing though? Like that they are less mature looking.
I don't know. I
'Cause
can remember.
there's a difference between like aging and
Well, we have a friend at church who turned 40 this last week, and I did not guess he was 40. I figured he was in his late 30s. I mean, I figured just based on how long he's been working, and how long he's been out of school, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But looking at him, I did not guess he was 40. And Denise and I were talking about that, and she reminded me that there was a we were at choir practice at Oak Grove years ago. And I was sitting next to the young man that did the custodial work at church in the choir. And it was his birthday, and he told me, somebody said happy birthday to him. I asked him how old he was. He said, I'm 30. And I made him pull his driver's license out to show me. I thought he was like 24, 25. And I said, well, that's interesting because my birthday is next week. He said, how old are you? I said, I'm going to be 40. He goes, there's no way. Show me your license. I said, and I told him, I said, in 10, 20 years, we're going to wish we were still looking 10 years younger than we were. But,
yeah.
But I don't know. I would think probably, probably not genetics as much, because if gene degradation is really something that's happening,
I mean, there's a certain amount of it that's like the style of the time, the clothing they're wearing, the type of haircut.
But I also think
like he doesn't look 34 there. I forget that actor's name.
Oh, the
He does not
actor?
look-
Yeah.
from Cheers. He don't look 34.
I wouldn't guess he was 34 in that
No,
picture.
he
I'd
looks
put
like
it
he's 42,
in his
43.
mid-40s, yeah.
Yeah.
But he looks like he's he doesn't. But you see people, the expression that rode hard and put away wet. I've been, I worked with a guy who was one of our store managers, who had been an electrician all of his life from the time he was a kid. Grew up on a farm hauling hay, but he had been out in the sun. If the sun was up, he was out in it. Well, that just he was weathered up.
Yeah.
And when I found out how old he was like 3 or 4 years older than me. He was just not old, not as old as I thought he was looking at him, but he was just. So I think lifestyle. Yeah, he was weathered.
How long do you live?
Huh?
He's still alive.
I don't know how old he was when he passed away. So he's 3 or 4 years older than me, so that would mean he would just now be hitting his early 70s. So I think he died in his mid 60s probably. But he's also a 3-pack a day guy.
Yeah, that's
those.
Yeah, that'll take it.
Watched a clip the other day. A clip came across of the old Tonight Show, watching people light up cigarettes on TV. I'm like, they used to do that. I forgot.
They used to smoke on planes.
Yeah.
There was a smoking section on the plane.
Yeah. I remember when they made non-smoking sections and smoking sections in restaurants. I remember thinking like, you folks don't understand air conditioning. That hair is all moving around.
Well, eventually they
took it out all the way.
completely.
Now within 20 feet of the doorway or something like that.
Yeah. I don't know. Freedom
Yeah, that's interesting to.
to pollute other people's hair.
So I'm sure lifestyle has a lot to do with it. If you who's the guy who was famous for losing all his weight eating Subway sandwiches.
Jared?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think if
you know what else he was doing.
yeah,
too, right?
yeah. Yeah, I think if all of your meals are McDonald's French fries, you're probably not going to look like you're as young as you're supposed to be. It's gonna.
You ever see Super Size Me? Where it's a documentary. The guy ate McDonald's for 30 days, just McDonald's.
Yeah,
That's all he could have. He didn't. I mean, I think he gained some weight. I think he passed away not too long ago.
No, he's still alive. 'Cause
Really?
he just released out another documentary. He did Super Size Me
was that
2.
a death hoax then?
Possibly. Morgan Spurlock.
Yeah.
well, for 30 days, I would think for 30 days it would not have as dramatic effect on you as if
His
it was,
organs.
if it was
though,
a much
he
longer.
was doing blood work and stuff through the whole thing, and the doctor's like, "You need to quit," because like his liver was starting to go, and like that must.
You are right.
with a
Okay, yeah.
He did
yeah, it was just the preservatives and stuff that's in that
What he's died
food
from?
is.
cancer.
Because he did a bunch of those challenges, a bunch of those like 30 days of this, 30 days of that. What kind of cancer?
I don't know.
Yeah,
You know who I thought was dead was Lou Ferrigno, and I could have sworn he had passed away.
He's still kicking?
Yeah, and he was still alive. Yeah, I saw it the other day, and I'm like,
yeah.
but apparently it was some death hoax or some in 2014, I think. I could have sworn.
He's got to be pretty aged too.
I think he's still.
But he and
he's still-
Schwarzenegger are about the same age. I
He's
think.
still pretty bulked though, from what I
Yeah.
understand. Like he's
So
he's
those
doing
guys,
pretty good.
the Jack LaLanne theory of life. You know
Yeah.
Jack LaLanne?
Yeah,
Yeah.
juicing, lots of juice.
Lots of juice.
Swim across the river, pulling a boat.
Yeah. Swim across the Hudson.
Yeah.
Saw pictures of them swimming in the Seine River in Paris the other day because they spent all this money cleaning that river up so people could get back in it. I'm like, I still don't think I'd want to.
Jack LaLanne was swimming. in it?
No, but
He's-
just people.
is
just,
he still alive?
No, just people in Paris in general were swimming in it.
I don't think I'd swim.
The French.
And I remember when they had the Olympics there, they were talking, some swimming race they were supposed to do in the Seine, and they were, oh yeah, we got the river all cleaned up for you. And 2 or 3 of the athletes were like, nah, you tested it yesterday and it was over the limits, and now you say today it's okay for me to swim in it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Polluting the water.
Pollute the water. See, that was probably part of that whole thing coming out of the 60s and 70s too, because air pollution and water pollution was pretty rampant. There wasn't a lot of concern being
Yeah, there's a lot of
spit on water.
DDT and
You drive into
Agent
Houston,
Orange.
you could see the oil refineries from 100 miles away because of the cloud cover.
ozone layer was going away, and
I don't know what they plugged that hole in the ozone layer with.
well, supposedly you stopped using all the aerosols and the R12 and the stuff that was punching the hole in it, and it recovered.
Yeah,
So, yay!
good for them. Yep.
Did you ever trust our lawmakers then?
I bet that there are probably some really trustworthy ones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you bet.
I bet there probably are.
Yeah.
I think that probably most people get into that because they want to do good. And then a few of them get into it just because they know they're going to get rich off of it. But I think that probably a lot of them really want to do well. And then when they get into it, they discover that because of the nature of the business requires so much compromise. And if I'm going to get my bill passed, and I have to help you get your bill passed, even though I don't necessarily agree with it. There was a John Kennedy book John Kennedy wrote. He talked a lot about that when he got into Congress, realizing that he said, I don't want to say you compromise your principles, but sometimes you have to be willing to, I really want to get this thing fixed. In order to get this fixed, we have to agree to do something else. I guess the thing that bothers me most about that is these 1,000-page bills with all kinds of stuff in it. Like, why can't you just pass those one thing at a time?
I'm not sure anything would get passed if they did that.
Well, they would if they weren't having all these meetings trying to point fingers at everybody and figure out
Somebody's got to point fingers.
somebody. I remember with the when the Obamacare bill was passed, the infamous quote, we have to vote on
We
it,
have to
then we
vote
can
on it?
and then we can read it. I'm like, nah.
We have to vote on it to see what's in it.
Did you say that out loud? Really? Did you? I'm like, I can't be the only person that thought that was just.
So pass a law that every bill can only be 1 page long.
Well, I was wondering, like, if you want a bill for, fixing waterway problems, have a bill for fixing waterway problems. Don't tie that to a bill for education systems.
Yeah.
And if you wanted money to build a bridge to go from Alaska to California, pass a bill for that. Don't make it an amendment on a bill. But I also realize that I think that probably the reason they do it, they can say like, well, I had an amendment that was going to fix the public school problem in Texas, but those guys voted it down. Well, it was on another bill that nobody would vote for. The other part of the bill was that we were going to empty all the prisons out. Nobody could vote for that. So it's like they pair things up so that, well, I introduced a bill, but those guys voted it down. I'm sorry. Make yours a standalone bill. Let's see if it passes. Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of like every legislative session in Texas that I can remember, there's been bills introduced to do away with property tax and bills introduced to lower property tax.
But Texas doesn't have a state income tax, so property tax is one of their primary.
And primarily property tax was supposed to be for schools. Yes. Primarily for schools. And then when they lowered the one time they lowered property tax, they introduced the state lottery, and then all that money was going to go to schools. I think that probably didn't work out real well either for the schools. But then when you send all the money to the schools, does it really do anything to help the schools, or do they just use it to hire another employee to manage the money that's coming in?
Yeah, one administration has gone through the roof in almost every single, whether it's insurance, hospitals, schools.
Yeah, for every teacher, you have 2 or 3 administrative people, kind of a thing.
Bloated.
So,
how you feel about that school choice thing they passed?
I don't know. I go back and forth on it. I like the idea of my kids went to public school. We went to public school. I can see advantages in the non-public schools that I'm aware of seem to do a good job. And so I think, should parents have a choice between doing it? Yeah, I think they should. Should they be able to take, I guess the crux of it seems to be taking public funds away from public schools to go to private schools.
But if you're paying money in for a kid and the child's going to be put in another system that's going to be schooling it.
So now you're paying for 2 systems.
But your kid's not in the school. Like, say your kid costs $8,000 a year to be in the public school system. You're not costing that money because the kid's not there.
Right.
So then they take that funds and take it somewhere else. Now, yeah, there's obviously room for corruption. Like, okay, I think it's $10,000 per kid is the number. Well, I think every single public school is private school is automatically going to raise their tuition to $10,000.
Sure. Well, I'm paying property taxes that's going to public school, but I want to put my kids in private school, so that's money coming out of my budget because my taxes aren't changing. They're not lowering my property tax just because I put my kids in private school.
No.
So in essence, I'm paying for a school
but
I'm
also
not using.
Your property tax doesn't cover the cost of one kid either,
that's true.
especially if you're homesteading. Like, it doesn't come anywhere near covering the cost of one kid.
Yeah.
Unless you've got a lot of land.
Yeah. Yeah, my little lot's probably not enough to cover.
Probably not.
But yeah, it's I remember because when my brothers and I went to school, my parents didn't own property. We lived in a parsonage. And so when my dad bought a house, we were all out of school, and he said, I'm paying taxes that are supporting the local school, but I didn't pay any towards the local school when you guys were in school. So now somebody else did that. So he felt like it was fair for him to put, for some of his property tax to go back in the school system. He said, because those kids are still going to be out in public and,
yeah,
they're going to be cops and firemen and teachers and
speaking of
moms and dads. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know that the whole school choice thing. I like a lot of. There are a lot of good things in private schools, and I understand why people pull their kids out of public school because of some of the problems in public schools. But I don't know that that's. It's kind of like it for me. It almost turns into a white flight suburbanization of schools, like we do with towns. It just if everybody pulls their kids out of public schools.
But do you think it would bring a certain amount of competition to the public schools as well? Because there's not going to be enough room in private schools for one. Unless you start opening.
They're not bigger. Yeah, I think.
But also the level of competition to do better because now there's.
I would hope so. I would certainly hope so. Because I don't know any teachers. I personally don't know any teachers in public school that go to school every day and just pass the time. They all go to school to teach.
Sure. Yeah.
Now that's probably not 100% of the teachers, but I also understand that I have family members that are teachers that have changed school districts just because the environment of the school district they were in. I have one that got physically assaulted in school pretty regularly by students. She goes, I can't do anything about that. The system doesn't allow for any kind of a discipline issue.
So that's like a culture system in that school district where it's the kids in school, it's the administration, it's everything kind of coming together.
Yeah, the city, the public culture, parent culture, family culture, all has created a storm. Mm-hmm. And but I have other teacher friends that are in public schools that say but if we all leave, who's going to teach these kids? Somebody has to. You have to try and have as much influence as you can.
And we don't want to be in a society full of idiots.
Yeah.
So
too late.
Well,
no, I know what you mean.
I mean, you want people to be able to write and read. I think that. I mean, I don't know. In my opinion, the school system used to be doing a better job. And then if you look at a lot of particular districts across this country too, like there's high schoolers who can't even read.
That's
how you get there, I don't know.
Yeah, how can you just keep? It used to be the athletes, got the passes like that, but now it's kind of getting to where it's like everybody seems to be. I know that there's friends who are in public education in Texas, at least, have been frustrated with the teaching to pass the exam structure that seems to have been in place for the No Child Left Behind kind of thing. Mm-hmm. If they teach kids to pass a test because that affects the funding of the school and affects.
But then they do go off and get rid of standardized testing as well after a bit.
Yeah.
So, or will you just grade everybody on a curve at that point?
I don't know. It's weird. I don't know. I know I can remember even in school, when I was in school, there weren't a lot of the AP classes, advanced classes like that. There were a few, but but even in everybody took American history, but there were classes. It seemed like that the students in different classes, were grouped somehow by grade, I don't want to say by intelligence, but by, kids who learned quicker and kids who learned slower seemed to be grouped into classes together. And I can remember that when I was in high school, there was some concern about that. So they tried to do a better job of mixing the classes because they said, well, the kids who learn a little slower in classes with kids who learn a little quicker, then they'll help each other.
Will they?
I'm like, I don't know. I didn't see a lot of that. I had one class where a buddy of mine and I were in where we ruined the curve for the class.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Positively or
positively? No, negatively. I think that
you brought the curve down.
Without our grades, everybody else's grades would have been better because the curve would have been. We scored substantially higher than most of the rest of our classmates.
You scored so high that it messed up everybody else's grades. Yeah,
which is strange. I had a professor in college. One of my favorite professors was he would give tests and you accumulated points per question. And so your grade was a raw score. You got 345 points. You got 501 points. And there would be more questions on a test than you could answer, but each one marked on there how much the point value was. So you could go through and do all the big point questions first, as many as you could, And then when he told you there was 5 minutes left, you flipped to the back page. It was true, false, because they were 1 point each. You like rolled down through there as quick as you could. But then he'd take all his sections. If he had 5 or 6 sections of that class, he would take all the raw points and list them in order. And he said there would be natural break points, which became his A, B, C, D break points. He said, there's a bunch of people that scored from 400 to 350, and then the next score was 310. He said, and then it'd be from 310 to 275, and then the one below that was 250. He said, so there seemed to be kind of natural breaks. And so your letter grade, and he would post that so everybody could see it. And of course, it's it's posted in a way that you don't. I guess I was posted my student ID number or something. That's how we'd go read the bulletin board, see what our grade was.
So your own ID number.
So you knew our ID number, but you didn't know anybody else's. But it was interesting because he explained to us the first day of class that's how he did it. He said you pick which questions you want to answer. So it was actually a computer class, and so you'd go through and you do all the programming problems first. Write little lines of code and stuff like that because you got more points for those. Or you would troubleshoot code. But I thought, well, that seemed like a pretty fair way to do it because then that way, as the whole group of us taking the test, we sort of sorted ourselves out based on had we prepared or not, did we know the material or not.
Have you heard about vibe coding?
No, I don't know what that is.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe vibe coding is where you let AI code for you and you kind of just flow with the vibe. What does that say?
Vibe coding is a software development approach where developers primarily use natural language prompts to instruct AI tools to generate, refine, and debug code.
So you tell it what you want to do, and it creates a code for you.
I've been hearing people have problems with it. Like they end up with a lot of bugs, and
I wondered if it's if it would be if you didn't know how to code anyway.
that's
If you depend on this, would you be able to spot problems? Would you be able to debug it? Whereas if you wrote code, you're more likely to be able to debug.
Yeah, you can scan through and find the problem.
And a couple of computer guys I knew at work would talk about that when they would write programs that they would try and crash each other's code because that's how you check for problems. They'd have a big project, and each one would work on a section of it, and then they would try and set up a situation that crashed the code, so you make sure you didn't allow for when we ran out of stock. So you have to go back and put an extra variable in.
Well, now you can just add
But now if you just
AI to make that program for you.
that's that I don't know. Is my reaction to that the same as when remember teachers say, well, you need to learn to do this math because you're not going to be able to carry a calculator around with you all the time. Math. Yeah, I do actually. I got this. I got this little phone here that's
tracking device.
got my
your phone numbers.
Got my Apple calculator right there.
How many phone numbers do you remember?
I remember the one I had when I first moved to Nacogdoches as a 10-year-old, and I remember my home phone number for the house I live in now. That's I don't know if anybody has it or not, but we don't use it anymore. But yeah, not very many. I know mine, and I know that one of my daughters is 1 digit up, and Denise's is 2 digits up, so I can kind of work my way into them if I have to. Yeah.
I still know a few phone
I used to know a lot of phone numbers. Yeah, you used to know all your friends' numbers.
I think this is an interesting concept because for people that probably just want to dip their toes into coding and actually produce something, it may be buggy and you may have to learn how to go back and find those bugs and fix it. I think that's a net positive.
I think it could be good. Both my grandsons talk about taking classes in coding. One's was a junior high school, and one was a first grader. He said, on Tuesdays and Thursdays they had computer class. I said, what do you do? He said, well, we played this game. I said, what is it? He said, well, it teaches us to write code. I'm like, I don't know what kind of code does a first grader write, but yeah, I don't. But again, just the whole concept that he's learning to write code is he writing code to make the little man jump over the mountain? But that's still learning.
Yeah. I think the divide with the AI thing is like the difference between a generalist and a specialist. And which is where does the value lie? Like if you have the AI to rely on constantly, you can be a generalist and you can like have an awareness of how to prompt something to do something specific for you. Now, the AI's code is based on everyone else's code, at least right now. At a certain point, maybe it becomes sentient and it can create novel code. But so far, large language models, as far as I understand, are still all derivative. Like if you say, write me a book, it reads a million books and then writes a book based on a million books.
And that makes sense because when I learned on my last job, we worked in Excel a lot. And so I was wanting to learn how to write macros so that I didn't have to keep doing the same steps over and over again. And you can record a macro, but it's specific for that one thing. I thought, well, how do I modify that code so that it can be, a macro is a short computer program that repeats a number of steps. Like I had a spreadsheet where I had to do a series of calculations, and I would enter a series of numbers, and every month I would have to recreate that, and I would have to add a column, and then I'd have to reformat it so that the date looked right when it printed out. So all these little steps. Well, the macro is a little computer program that would do that. Well, in Excel, you can record those steps as you're doing them, and then save that, and then you can play that macro, and it will do those same steps over and over again. But it would only work for if your recording was for 10 lines, it would only do 10 lines. I thought, well, how do I make it where if I need 12 lines, it would do 12, or if I need 30 lines, it would do 30. And so, I went to Dr. Google, Excel help. And so I found examples of how, other people had done that because there are lots of tutorials there. I found a guy that taught a computer class on Excel at the University of Minnesota, and he posted all the stuff online. And here's a problem. You have 6 salesmen that sell this many products in this many months, and you have to write a program that will create these different reports. I thought, well, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Only it's not salesmen, it's customers. So and you could download his code, do your homework, and then turn it back in. So I'm like, well, how did he do that? So, you look at somebody else's code and you figure out how to modify it to solve your problem. So I guess that's kind of what AI is doing. It's just doing it much faster.
Is that not a kind of demonstrating what that would be? It would just be a partnership with AI.
Yeah.
To kind of go through and work out all the bugs, figure out. It reminds me of the time of MySpace. Back before Facebook, back before Instagram.
MySpace, yeah.
Where MySpace was very code friendly, where you could actually go in there and say somebody had written a code and changed, the whole look of your MySpace and blah, 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 right? Put in images and embedded music. You
could do that to MySpace?
Oh, yeah.
See, I was anti-social media from the beginning. Like,
yeah,
I remember back in like 2002 when everyone had blogs, and I'm like, I thought about like writing a blog, and I'm like, nah. And then from then, everywhere then it was MySpace, and it was Facebook and Twitter, and I just always stayed out of it.
So with that, that's where as a young teenager is when I got exposed to like coding in that format, right? It was, I guess it was just HTML. Really, you're just going through there and changing it. But you would find a page that you liked, you would copy their code, you would go through and copy it on your page, and then tweak it and mess around and go through, okay, well, I don't want this image there. Where's that image located in the code? Link it, blah, 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 right? So yeah, and it was kind of a shame, that it went the way of Facebook and standard. Yeah. Everyone's page looks all the same, and it's just more content based versus.
And that's a lot of what I did in learning to write macros. Is you just find the code. I wanted to know how could I. Every month, the number of entries on my spreadsheet changed. I had more rows. So how do I write it so that my formulas are dynamic, so that it adjusts my formula? Because I don't want it to sort blank lines, or I don't want it to fill in blank lines. So how do I write this? And I found a guy that had written a little short program that you picked what column, and it would go down and find the last non-blank cell and load that into a variable, and then you just use that variable whenever you wanted to sort through a certain set of ranges. You know, but again, it's just like kind of like what you were describing. You find something you like that worked, and you figured out how to make it work. And we had a sheet that we did that would we got a data dump from the computer guys from a computer program, but it was set up with names and addresses, but we had to sort it so that it was we had to break it up to the last name, first name for the people, and then the addresses that were originally set up were a street address, a town, a state, and a zip code. But sometimes we needed 2 lines for the street address because you'd have, such and such place and then an apartment number or something. So we had to go in and add columns. So by the time you go in and add this column 4 or 5 times every single month, I'm like, well, I'm not a program. It just automatically adds that column in every time.
Right.
Yeah. So it was fun. It was fun to play with. And
in a way, you were vibe coding.
Somebody told me what I wanted, and then I went and did it.
Yeah.
So, here's my vibe.
Your collaborators were just other people on YouTube.
The voice on this side of my head and the voice on this side of my head were
There's
vibing.
always, I mean, if you can copy other work and save time, and then I know in like the coding community, they're like very open about, like a certain amount of them are very open about, like, oh yeah, use my process, use this, like it's very
free source,
the open source.
Yeah.
Well, I remember in the programming languages that I learned when I was in college. This, if you want this to happen, here's the words or the symbols that you need to put in. And each line of code had to have a period at the end of it, and if it didn't, then the computer wouldn't know what to go to the next one. So there are certain things that you had to learn. It's like learning to translate from English to Spanish. The word "the" in English, here's how you translate that into Spanish. And so then you would write a program that every time I found a word "the," you would put this other Spanish word in there instead. Just have no idea what the Spanish word for "the" is, but
La?
L?
L? Yeah, la is female. L is male, right? I don't know. We're talking about shit now.
I don't know.
My Spanish teacher in high school, I mean, bless her. I came in halfway through my junior year. My other credits didn't transfer over. They told me I had to take 2 years of Spanish just to graduate. And I knew this completely other different language. And she was like, yeah, I could not tell you one thing I learned in that class.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Somehow I got out of foreign language in school. I think because I was in band, and band was a 2 credit per semester. We had 2 class periods for band, so I think that they let us substitute one of those.
Does anybody really actually learn a second language? Like the joke that I always hear is that you go through Spanish class, but nobody can speak Spanish afterwards.
Yeah.
You're doing it in school.
Yeah, book Spanish, but
maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. I know, I guess the closest example I have right now is my kids in Germany. They took a formal class, and one of the things that Amanda does is when new missionaries come on field, she helps set them up for classes, because Germany requires you to become proficient in German if you're to keep a residency visa.
Oh, really?
And so
not a bad requirement.
Not a bad requirement. So they went like 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. They had homework. And I remember Luke telling me, and then there's a series of tests, like you C level 1, C level 2, C level 3, then you go to B levels and A levels or some system like that. And I remember him telling me one time that he had passed a certain test. I said, well, how much German can you speak? He said, I now know as much German as a dog does. So I said, I can now speak like a kindergartner.
9.
He said, but then I said, so does that help when you go to the stores? He said, it does some, except that we're learning book German and the colloquial German it's spoken in the store. He said, Dad, it's just like if you learn to speak English and then you walk into, Lone Star Farm and Feed in downtown Nacogdoches, that's not the same English you learned in English class. There's lots of twang, lots of colloquialisms, and
what do we think about as a nation? Should we require residents to speak English?
I have a mixed feeling about that as well. My oldest grandson, his other parents immigrated here from Mexico, and I remember when his grandmother got her green card, he was probably 7 or 8 years old, and she came by our house and showed it to us. We would see her; she would come by the house to see him, and she was taking a class to learn to speak English at one of the churches here in town, and she came by and she was excited to show it to us. And I was excited for her because I know it's a lot of work. I remember Mom being naturalized and how much work that was. And Mom basically spoke the language already. Mm-hmm. But I remember thinking, her husband had, for the 20 years before I met him, worked a construction job from daylight till dark, 6 days a week. When was he going to learn to speak English? Mm. He could speak construction English. Because he worked for an English-speaking company, and you learned enough to get by on a job. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that requirement. I think in general it's good. The Italian immigrants that came, the Polish immigrants that came, the German immigrants that came, they all learned to speak English. Well, you're from an area of the country, where people
Norway,
came.
Swedish,
They learned to speak English, but even still, they probably still have communities there that.
Not really anymore.
Not as
I know
much.
my I think it was one of my grandpa's sisters, or maybe a little cousin, maybe could barely speak English, but she was like 95 or something like that. I'm sure she's passed by now, but yeah, there were a few really old people who could barely speak English, but for the most part, they all at this point had assimilated in.
So your parents' generation, though, they were probably bilingual to the old language? Were they all pretty much English?
I don't know. They all no.
Yeah.
My dad spoke English, and
I have a friend who's a therapist, psychologist in Tyler, who went to church with us here at Oak Grove. His parents immigrated here from Mexico, but his dad would not let them speak Spanish at home because he wanted them to speak English.
Interesting.
He learned Spanish in college. He said in high school he took French because his dad said, I don't want you to speak Spanish because when people look at you, they're going to make a judgment. He said, and so you need to have good English so that you can, because you're assimilated in, this is the culture you're living in.
Well, that's the thing is if you want to keep your culture, there's some, I guess, requirements that you'd have to have in order to maintain that. If you allow other groups to come in, set up their own culture and disdain your culture and hate America for what it is, it's like, well, why are you here?
Yeah. I remember, I think I don't know if it's here, I told this story or somewhere else, but I made a trip out to West Texas with Elliot, and I was riding with a salesman, and we were making sales calls one day, and there's a large Mennonite German population that farms out there. And there were a lot of Spanish families, Mexican families living there when the German immigrants came in, and so they commingled. There's a large Spanish-speaking, German-speaking Mennonite community.
Oh, I bet you they got some good food.
So we went. So we
What
stopped.
do Germans have? Bratwurst?
I mean,
Yeah.
Schnitzel.
Yeah.
Shit, yeah.
Yeah, so we stopped at a welding shop. He said, it'll be interesting when you walk in here because you'll see people who look like their ancestors from Mexico, people who look like their ancestors from German, and they're all speaking English. He said, but you'll also hear German and you'll hear Spanish.
They probably have
and a
some
lot of them,
amalgamation, too,
yeah. And so the accents were just,
yeah.
to hear a guy who looks like he's immigrated from Mexico with his family, and hear him speaking English with a German accent was a little mind tweaking for me. I'm a good East Texas boy. That was almost too many different variables
Pushing it too far.
to push.
Well, it reminds me of recently. I think it was Argentina. The president released some classified documents that supported that Hitler potentially
The Germans.
didn't die and moved in with the Germans all down there in South America. And I've heard of people going down there and crossing over a mountain pass, and it's just a bunch of white Germans speaking Portuguese.
I have
Portuguese.
Yeah,
I had a friend from Brazil.
because they're assimilating.
Yeah, but Argentina's not. That's Spanish. Brazil's
Is it
Portuguese.
Is it not Portuguese in there?
In 1980, I went to work at a
be
restaurant.
wrong,
I took a part-time job in a restaurant to earn money to get married. and I was working in the kitchen, and I could hear a waitress in the front of the restaurant that had a German accent. And so one day on break, I went and I looked her up and just asked her, I hear your accent. Where are you from? She said, I'm from Brazil. I said, you have a German accent. She said, well, my grandparents immigrated from Germany to Brazil. She said, I speak Portuguese and I speak German. Each set of grandparents had a native language, and then I speak English. I said, well, how'd you end up in Nacogdoches? She said, well, my husband came to, we moved here from Portugal, and he came here on a mission trip and was working at a Spanish-speaking church in Crockett, Texas, and they asked him to consider moving here and being their pastor. I thought, okay, now I'm real confused, But he came here. He was actually going to SFA, but his family was the same background. He had a set of Brazilian parents who spoke Portuguese, a set of German grandparents who spoke German, and then they spoke English in school. He said, and then I had to learn Spanish so that I go work with this Spanish church. And he was going to SFA to finish his music degree because he had started his music degree in Brazil. He was the first chair clarinetist for the Rio de Janeiro Symphony Orchestra. Mm. He was a very talented musician. But when I knew them in Nacogdoches, they had 4 sons, and their sons were learning all the languages because they were going to school in Nacogdoches, and they went to church in a Spanish-speaking church, and their grandparents, they said, whenever we go home, they're going to have to be able to communicate there. Mm-hmm. And so he said every night at dinner, they would rotate through the languages at dinner night so that the boys could learn, as first and second graders. I'm like,
I think that's
pretty impressive. Yeah.
I think that's something that American families just, I don't know what happened. We lost that along the way, that the importance of speaking other languages.
It's because America first. America.
I guess so.
And that's part of that. Yeah. That's part of the speaking English as a national language. I think a lot of countries, most countries have a native language or a primary language that they want people to speak. Mm-hmm. Which makes sense because you have to be able to work together there.
Yeah, but English is the language of business. Yeah. So, you go to Denmark, everyone speaks English. Mm-hmm. And they're very comfortable speaking it.
And when we would go,
when we went to Spain, though, about half the people could maybe speak English, but they didn't really want to speak it.
Yeah, I can remember going into stores and in parks in Germany with the kids, and people would switch to English when Denise and I walked up in a store. They would hear us speaking English to the kids, and so they would switch to English to speak to us. Shopkeepers and people in the park, stuff like that. So it's a pretty common second language in lots of places.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's good to know multiple languages, just from a
brain
power perspective.
I think learning them young is much easier too, because then you're not translating in your mind. You just know 2 words for the same thing.
Yeah,
which is different.
Yeah,
when you're thinking in the language.
I asked Luke one time if he still translated in his mind when he was working between languages. He said not generally. He said sometimes there's a specific thing, because they've had some health issues and they had 2 babies born in the hospital. Amanda's been in the hospital for surgery once. He said, so you don't learn medical German when you're taking German language classes. He said, so a lot of times doctors and nurses in their offices, they'll have someone who's an English speaker, but it's that English is not their primary language. And so you're doing a little bit of having to, what does this word mean back?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Now, sometimes when we Skype with them, we'll see either Luke or Amanda will turn to the other one and go like, what's the English word for? Yeah. He says, because Luke and Amanda will do that sometimes. He said, because they know words in German that they never knew the English equivalent for when they're describing things in their area.
Oh yeah, and there's some words in German that aren't even English words for. Like Schadenfreude.
Yeah, there's our niece or our granddaughter went to a camp in 3rd grade. Part of finishing 3rd grade in Berlin schools, at least, is they have to go to a swimming class and pass a test to show they're proficient at swimming. And so her 3rd grade class and several classes went on a 5-day field trip, basically, to another town, to a sports hotel. and they played games, stuff like that. But one of the things that they did was learn to swim, and she had to be able to swim 25 meters. She had to be able to go down to the bottom of an 8-foot pool and retrieve an object, and she had to be able to float for so long,
What age?
And so she's 3rd grade, so she's 9,
Oh, okay.
8 and 9. But then when they pass this test, they get a little certificate, but they also get a little patch that they can sew onto their swimsuit. So when they go to public swimming, then the lifeguards know, oh, these kids have been through this class. And I thought, well, that's an interesting way to do that, to make sure all the
That's
kids
very
can
German.
swim. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Organized.
Yeah.
Refined. That's how they start 2 world wars.
Yeah.
Yep.
By sewing patches on people.
That's a conspiracy theory there, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was interesting. We Skyped with her, and I asked her about her class. Did she enjoy camp? And she said, yeah, she enjoyed it. It was fun. And they're in the school that she goes to. They've had the same 2 teachers for 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. The same group of kids. The teachers have moved up with them, and so that way they built relationship with the kids, and they've had new kids come and go during the 3-year period. Mm-hmm. But it's the same basic group of kids and teachers. And so they were having an end of school party because they're graduating from 3rd grade to 4th grade, but they're also going to a new set of teachers. Mm. And I thought, again, that's kind of a nice thing too, is that the teachers know the kids and have seen them progress a little bit, so they know which ones may need a little more help than others.
So they were born there, the grandkids.
Yeah, the kids were. Yeah,
so
grandkids.
How much time have they spent there versus here?
Just visiting here is all they've done. Yeah.
So they're more.
Yeah, they're
German
more German
than English?
they're more German than English.
They have accents, like good accents.
When they speak German, they sound German. There's a little German accent there to it. Every now and then when they talk to us or when they speak English at home, we'll pick up a little bit of a twang, from mom and dad. They picked up some accents from their mom and dad. Mm. Max, not quite as much as Lucy. Every now and then Lucy will say something. I'm like, girl, you're from Texas in your heart. You just don't know it. But they've been back over here several times, for 2 and 3 weeks at a time. But
yeah. Their English is pretty good though.
Yeah,
given they probably speak it. At
they
home.
speak English at home all the time, and Luke told me that not too long ago they were in the park. He and Max were in the park, and a little boy ran up. Somebody kicked a soccer ball, and the little boy ran up to it to get it. And Max switched from English speaking with Luke to speaking German to this little boy mid sentence. He said, "I'd not ever heard him do that before." He said, "I know they speak German." He goes to like a daycare, Kita. Daycare for 3-year-olds, and they speak German and English there, and so they have teachers. They have teachers in each room. They're designed for helping them with that. But he said, I know he speaks German. He said, but now they've noticed around the house every now and then he'll slip German words into his English sentences. Some of his numbers, when he's counting, or how many pieces do you have, and then he'll use the German number rather than the English number. So he's getting to edit. He's just turned 3, so he's getting with those.
Getting his streams tossed just a little bit.
Get him switch back and forth.
How long do they plan on staying there?
They'll be there till they get a burning bush handwriting on the wall thing that says "Come home."
Gotcha.
So that's home for them. So they're comfortable doing the mission work, and they're comfortable with the environment.
Are they friendly? Like, is it a friendly culture toward missionaries?
Not particularly. It's Berlin. Berlin's a big urban area, so there's that the normal aloofness that you get in urban areas sometimes. Berlin, because it was part of the East Germany, there's a lot of reluctance to deal with religion. I think the statistics are something like 1% of the people have or claim any kind of a relationship with Jesus. He said there's a lot of even here there's a lot of interest in spirituality. So there's a lot of Eastern religions because there are so many different cultures there. There's a large Muslim influence in the city. So Luke was one of his newsletters he sent out last month. I think he said that he and Lucy had stopped at a new chocolate shop. That a new shop opened up that they passed it walking to school. He said they stopped in there to get a cup of coffee and a cup of hot cocoa for Lucy, and and donuts, whatever they have. He said I noticed when I was there. He said it just felt the atmosphere felt different in this little shop, and he couldn't really put his finger on it. He said they sat and they ate. And they talked a little bit, and he answered some emails. And said, and then it dawned on him that the background music was worship music, and it was not vocal, but was instrumental worship music, and he recognized some of it. And so he waited till the crowd thinned out, and he introduced himself to the owner of the shop. And apparently, this guy is a believer, and had opened a shop. And he said, I want this to be a place where people can come and be comfortable, but this is what I listen to at home. He said, but Luke said it was a tangible difference in the feel there of the thing. But this guy, I guess, if I remember it right, they had not been in Berlin long, but for some reason had moved to Berlin and had opened up this little shop. So Luke was interested in developing a relationship with him to kind of have somebody else that he could visit with.
Yeah.
But he said their approach to mission work is not so much standing on the street corner preaching. It's just developing relationships, parents at school, people in the shops that they meet, and developing that. He said some people are open to it, some are not. He said, but basically, Amanda has done a lot of work at the school in the after-school program. She's taught an English ESL class as an after-school project at the school, and so then she's got to meet a lot of mothers, that are picking up their kids, and have the mothers come over with their daughters, and they have play dates and stuff like that. So that gives them a chance to develop a relationship and start talking about, well, why are you guys here? Well, we're here to teach people about Jesus. Yeah, and it's to open the conversation. So
yeah. Was the government friendly toward them?
I think it probably varies a little bit. I know that they're cautious to say they're missionaries because that word carries some colonialism overtones still. So
the Germans?
But yeah, they're just the society as a whole. Yeah, but the government is made up of individuals from a culture.
Yeah.
So there's a little.
Are they? Is it a anti-religious culture though? I know it's very secular.
Yeah, I think it's probably all
And they don't quite have a freedom of religion like we do, but also given it's a Western country,
it's kind of a live and let live kind of thing. Maybe
you do your thing, we'll do our.
We don't want you to proselytize, but
but it's not illegal to proselytize.
It's not illegal.
Proselytize. Yeah, like it is in some countries.
Yeah. So I know that there are different types of visas. The first visa they were on, they had to specify that they were working for a religious-based organization. And then when they got I think that's just the way that went. That then when they got their residency visa, they weren't required to do that. Now they're just listed that they work for an American-based company. And so there's a little bit of a difference there, which kind of reduces some of the restrictions somehow on them on what they can do. But yeah, I mean, it's not like they're not in Rwanda or China or the Soviet bloc someplace where there's just outright you can't do this kind of thing.
Yeah. What made them decide to become missionaries?
I think that as teenagers, they started feeling a call towards that. When they were teenagers, we made several mission trips, both inside Texas and inside Mexico, and they went on those and kind of got exposed to the fact that that could be, because we went and worked with missionaries someplace, and so I think that kind of opened that possibility that this something could be done. And then as they became young adults and in college and got married, they were in a church that sent out a lot of missionaries, and they got involved with some of those folks. And just somehow in the process of, Amanda went to school and got a teaching degree to teach English as an ESL certification, with the idea that I think in the back of our mind, wherever we go somewhere, this would be something I could do while we're there as missionaries. So it's just somehow it's just sort of, I don't want to say they were called to be missionaries, however that works, that God calls people to do things. For a while, we thought that they may be headed towards China. They had some friends that were missionaries in China, and they were kind of intrigued with the idea of being missionaries there. But I think when they decided, yes, we think this God is calling us overseas someplace, because I was kind of like, Dallas is a mission field. No, that's not where we feel like we're supposed to be. that they began praying about, where God wanted them to go, and they went through the church they were in had a missions pastor, and so he spent a lot of time working with them on how to know if this is really something that you think you're supposed to be doing, or is it just kind of everybody goes to youth camp, decides they want to be a preacher, sort of a thing. But as they prayed about where they needed to go, and they kind of set up some tests and things, and they decided that they discovered that they both felt like God was calling them to go to Germany. And so somebody at their church helped them set up a visit to Germany. So they took 3 weeks off of their jobs and went and stayed in Germany in 3 or 4 different towns with, people that were friends of friends, that were either missionaries or pastors there. And they went to 2 or 3 different towns and kind of did a little quick, what's it like to be a Christian here kind of thing. And Luke says that when they got off the train in Berlin in the main train station, they just kind of stood there for a minute and went like, this is it. This is where we're supposed to be. Yes. And however that works when God tells us those things in our head, in our heart. So they came back, decided that's where they wanted to be. And then they thought, okay, how do we get there? And somebody at their church put them in contact with the Greater Europe Mission organization. And they made application to those folks and went through several rounds of testing and things, and then got accepted into their program. And they went through about 2 years of training on cross-cultural ministry and what it's like to be in other cultures. They went through a long marriage counseling sessions. They said, because if there are struggles between you and your spouse here in a culture you're familiar with, when you go someplace else, they talk about it like, are you going to have children? You don't have children now. Are you planning on having children? And how is that going to affect? So the organization did a lot of, I've got a lot of Luke's books in the house. He's had a book called Perspectives on Missions. It's about like this. I picked it up and started one time. It's like picking up War and Peace and thinking you're going to read it in a hurry, but it's like, accounts and from different places, people in missions over the years, and a lot of history of missions, going back to the Moravians and, but the one chapter I do remember reading was about Mr. Elliot that went down into South America and was killed. He and some of his compatriots were killed, and then his wife and kids ended up going back down there as missionaries. And so a lot of this book was with those kind of accounts and things that you have to think about, that you have to deal with. So, and then there's a certain amount of fundraising. They help them to set a budget. If you're going to this country, here's what we think a budget would look like for you. And so they had to self-raise money, and so they're supported by donations from people, individuals and churches and groups. But they have a budget that the funds go to the organization, and they pay them a salary out of that, and then they have a business line that they can use for mission expenses. Some of the money goes for taxes and Social Security and health insurance, and all the usual things. But basically, all the things you would do if you were self-employed here, all those expenses they have to cover. And so they had to raise a certain amount of that. They had to have commitments for a certain amount of that budget before the organization would let them go overseas, basically, sponsor them. So then there was an area manager in Berlin that helped them set up a temporary apartment, and then helped them get located into an apartment, get them introduced into the language schools, and kind of get their feet on the ground and get going with it.
Yeah.
And then over the years, people have come and gone off of their financial team as things have changed. People have passed away, people have changed jobs. So a lot of times when Luke and Amanda come home, one of the things they do is they kind of try and ask the people who are here on their support team, do you have groups that we could meet with to talk about our mission, to let people know what we're doing? Because it may be that they would be interested in coming on as either prayer partners or financial partners or both. And they send out usually a monthly email that's got some information about what's going on in their personal lives, what's going on in their mission work. And so, but yeah, they love it. It's their home. So,
yeah.
Well, I think there's something to be said about probably being in a country where you blend in a little bit easier versus being a missionary in a country where you stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, Amanda says that she often has German people say, because our grandchildren are so blonde and fair-skinned, that in a country where children are blonde and fair skinned, people will stop and ask her, "How did you get your kids to be so blonde?" It's just kind of they just
Like, what's the recipe?
yeah. What's that? But yeah, you're right. They certainly they look more like walking down the street. They look like they're part of that culture.
And I'm glad to hear you say that their approach is definitely more, we're just living our life. And as, people come up to them to introduce and why are you here? That's, I mean, if you really boil it down, that's what every Christian's supposed to be doing, is reflecting that life to where people stop you and say, hey, what's different about you? Or why are you here? Or what are you doing?
It's kind of, why are you, they live in an apartment building that's 3 floors high, and it's basically 3 sides, like a letter C, and then the 4th side is the next apartment building. So there's a little courtyard area in there, and so there are families that live. Some of the apartments, their apartment covers all 3 floors, but some of the apartments are 1 floor, some are 2. But there are older families there, there are younger families there, and so they have interaction with those families. And so then they have you pass them walking in and out, stuff like that. So, develop some relationships with those folks. When Amanda went to the hospital when Max was born, the second baby, some of the neighbors, kept Lucy for a little while Luke ran down there and then came back again. And so, it's just like you would do in a neighborhood. You develop friendships and occasionally you get a chance to just outright preach to people, but most of the time it's just, one-on-one, getting to know people.
I'm just looking up stats of the cost of living in Germany. It looks right around the same as living over here.
It's close. The euro to dollar equivalency is really close. I know sometimes we'll, some of our, if we want to buy gifts for the grandkids, it's easier to send the money to Luke and have him purchase locally than to try and ship stuff there and hope it gets there or not. And so when we do that, you see an equivalency of the money exchange.
I'm just thinking of missionaries in different parts of the world, in poorer areas of the world, where
you can get by with less.
You can get by with less, and you don't need as much from your supporters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an added stress.
Well, they've had a lot of folks have had to drop off of their financial support team to the point that, part of the money that was going in goes into a reserve fund like you would do for a savings account. But then when there's expenses come up, you start pulling out of that, and so they reached a point this last year where that was starting to reach kind of a critical point. And so, Luke made an extra trip home last year to try and, raise a little extra support. And, one of the, it's an ongoing thing, it's just, almost all of their newsletters, they always include a link to their organization page where people can go and make donations either one time or, to do, monthly support kind of a thing there.
Yeah.
But there are a lot, and Luke says, there are a lot of good causes to support. There are a lot of people doing mission work that you can support. He said, but, we just ask people to pray about, does God want you to support us? And if so, from their local group, from their local home church there that they have started, they've actually sent a couple to France as missionaries that were, I think they were, at least one of them was from France, but they were in Berlin and were believers. And they had started coming to church together, and they just felt like God was calling them to go back to France as missionaries. So they helped them get hooked into the organization and do all the things necessary so that they could, raise funds and sponsor back out. And he said, that's cool. That's what church. He said, we hated to see them go because they were a big part of our local fellowship, but that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be going. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if there's the verses, I think it's in Acts where it talks about that, how can they hear unless somebody preaches, and how can they preach unless somebody sends them?
Yeah.
He said there's steps there. He said, for those who can't go, they can send others. And part of the sending is providing support. And I tell people all the time, Garth asked me one time, what do you pray about most? I'm like, I pray about my kids most. He said, why? I said, because I don't know if anybody else is praying for them. I said, no, I didn't make that up. That's what my mom used to say. That's what my grandmother used to say. It's just, I don't know if anybody else is praying for my kids, so I will. Yeah.
Yeah. You visit?
Yeah, we've been. I think we've been over there 5 times. We all went. The 2 girls who lived here and Jaden and Denise and I, the 5 of us went in 2015 for the first time. They moved in 2014 and they wanted a year before any of us came over. So we all went then in 2015. In 2016, Lucy was born, so we went then. And then I think in 2018, one year the kids called us in Skype and they said, "Dad, we have a question for you. We'd like to, the kids of us want to put together and buy Mom a ticket to come to Germany for Christmas. Is that okay with you?" I went, "Yeah, that's great. I'll miss her while she's gone." Yeah. So, well, we thought you might want to come too, but you got to buy your own ticket. So we went for Christmas one year when Lucy was, it must have been 2017 because she was not quite 2. And then Max was born at the end of, we went again a year later, I think 2019. Max was born at the end of 2021, and we went and spent a month when he was born. And then they've been back almost every year. This is the first summer that they haven't come home for a little while. They decided to, the expense of traveling with 2 kids and the logistics of that, they decided to spend the summer in Berlin this year.
Well, and now it's home.
It's home, yeah. That is home.
Yeah.
So, and, but yeah, they're doing good though. But they're happy there. It's
That's good too. Like it's
it doesn't they're a family with young children, and somebody's always got a runny nose, and there's always groceries to buy and skin knees, and
Yep.
we Skype with them. We look, see who's got the new Band-Aid. Yeah.
Who's the free bleeder? Our oldest daughter, she came in with a skin knee yesterday, bleeding everywhere, and
Rub a little dirt in it.
yeah. Well, I think the street did that for her.
Oh,
Yeah.
those are tough. Yeah. Yeah, I got pictures this year. Luke said that they were at the local park. He said it's one of those moments when you're looking around for your kids so you can leave and go home and you can't find them. And you happen to look up in a tree and she's perched about 15 feet up in a tree laughing at you because she managed to get there and you didn't see her get up there. So we got a picture of her up in a tree. And then the next picture we got was, he said, you turn your back on your kid for a minute. And it was a picture of Max that climbed up on top of one of the trash containers and was sitting on top of the trash can. So he's 3, so he climbed up to the top of a 5-foot trash container and was sitting on top of it. Yeah. I said, yeah, well, your life's getting adventurous, son.
Yeah, buckle up.
Buckle up.
Well, Mark, you been reading any good books lately?
I started this book by, I lost his name, How to Talk About Jesus and Not Feel Like an Idiot. And then the same guy co-authored a book called Do You Ever Wonder? And I got them both a day apart. And the Do You Wonder book is like, questions that you can use in conversations. And the chapter headings are like, do you ever wonder why we're attracted to beauty? Do you ever wonder why stories are all good versus evil? Do you ever wonder why we work so hard to get money when we know that's not really going to fix anything? Just kind of conversation starters. So those I'm kind of interested in working with them. He's one of the hosts on the Apologetics Canada podcast. He's one of the guys in that organization, which is the Wes Huff organization.
Yeah.
Did he give you answers? To those things?
I've read the questions. I haven't got to the answer. I had to decide which book to start first. So I thought, okay, I'll start the one I ordered first just to stay in order. But then each chapter is not like, I think that the premise of this book is, when people ask you hard questions, or what's a good way to start a conversation with somebody? When people say to you, how could a good God let 8-year-old little girls, get washed away in a flood? He said those are hard questions to answer. So how do you deal with that answer? Have you ever thought about why good and evil exist? And use that to develop that into the conversation. So I'm looking forward to reading that because I anticipate it's, from hearing him talk about it, it's kind of helpful hints for handling conversations like that.
Well, I know the last time you were on, we had found some other Christian.
Oh, James Scott Bell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your wife had pulled me aside in church and said,
Yeah, she found. We looked him up online. He's actually written. In fact, the first 5 books I found were written for authors. It's like how to write fiction, how to close out a story, how to develop a plot. So apparently, he's done a lot of writing like that. And then he's got several series of books that are mystery lawyer kind of books. And Denise had found one of them. We looked at. There was a series, and it's set in like, I think like 1903 or something like that, back in the late 1800s. It's about a woman that wants to be a lawyer, which is unheard of for women young. So there's a conflict between her and her family, but then she becomes a lawyer, and so there's a series of books that Denise has started reading. I'm glad she said something. She told me, I need to tell Ben that we found that.
So it's like Victoria and John Grisham.
Yeah. And but there's I forget one of the. She gave me the plot for one of the stories. I've lost it now, but there was one of the situations where she was dealing with issues with her family, wanted her to go to law school, but then she was in court against a guy, and like the judge and the other lawyers were like, "How can a woman be a lawyer? Women aren't smart enough to be lawyers," kind of thing. So she had to kind of. But this woman in the stories is a believer, and so there's she works her faith into what she does as a lawyer. So Denise is getting them on her Kindle. So, well, I know a Christian lawyer and a Christian.
Joking.
I know a Christian lawyer, a Christian used car salesman, and a Christian Democrat. So I think I've got 3 of the strangest friends in the world.
Oh, I thought this was a setup to a joke.
But it almost is. Yeah, in fact, I tell those 3 people that all the time. I said, I've got the weirdest set of friends. I got a Christian used car salesman. So, but
Well,
I mean, you can be an honest used car salesman.
of course you can. Yeah,
Of course.
and he doesn't shout on his commercials.
on our last episode, we played with the idea of starting a local book club for men. Is that something that you would potentially want to join in?
I don't know how that would work. I don't know what a book club does.
I don't know. You select the book and then you read it.
Read it
get
and talk
together
about it.
about it.
Yeah, that's sort of what this is. If we all read,
Maybe.
Yeah.
maybe be interesting. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
not sure if I'd want to read a bunch of like Christian books if they're anything like Christian movies.
yeah.
True.
Yeah, there's I picked up my Kindle a few weeks ago and I had pre-ordered a book that was like the next book in a series, and it was like 9 months ago, and like this pops up on my Kindle now. So I opened it up, looked at it, I'm like, I have no idea what this story is going on. So I had to go back and find the one before, and read it. But it's kind of the guy was a police detective in Denver and got injured and moved out to some little town in Idaho up on top of a mountain somewhere, a town of 500 people. And I was gonna live out his days there, and the local people found out he'd been a police officer and their sheriff had been killed, so they recruited him to be the sheriff. And now he's dealing with high crime in the mountains of Idaho, kind of thing. But
So it's like a serialized.
yeah, it's like a serialized thing. It's like one of them was the a drug syndicate from Chicago was trying to expand their dealership into Idaho, and so he was trying to fight those guys, and there's a little mystery involved, One of them got into kind of a crop circle kind of thing, It was like people's cows were getting slaughtered.
Was it aliens or was it?
I don't remember what this one was. I don't remember what it turned out. I think, I think it turned out to be, local. What was it? Somebody was harvesting organs to be sent to China for something. It was kind of weird. That was one of the weird ones. It was like book 6 or 7. By then, I'm almost done with the series.
What did the cows have to do with harvesting?
I don't know. There was something.
Were they like
there.
packing them in the cows' carcasses?
I
And
don't know what they were doing. I don't know. It's like, I usually hear that the other way where they're like, grinding up, steer horns to make aphrodisiacs out of or something. I don't know what they were doing.
What makes a good story for you?
I like a story that has, I guess I like sort of a mystery story where we're trying to figure out kind of a whodunit sort of thing. But I like for them to leave enough clues that I can work on figuring it out. I don't like for them to get to the last chapter and introduce a brand new character that did all the bad stuff. I wanted to kind of...
Well, that's not doing your groundwork.
Yeah, so I like that. I like series often because the same characters, you can see a little more character development over time. I've read some series where a guy was kind of kind of a ne'er-do-well, and over the course of several books, he turns into a better person. Not an overtly Christian book, but the moral standards change.
Yeah.
I've read a couple of books that are some of them are just, I guess it would be what would be called pulp fiction more than anything else. We have read a couple of interesting stories about guys who got out of the service coming out of the 1980s and 90s and the Middle East wars, and come back to the States and have trouble assimilating back into society, and get involved in the drug life, and then decide that they need to straighten that up, and they become PIs or lawyers or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in a lot of those stories, they've talked a lot about. It reminded me of the podcast you guys had with a guy from over in Crockett County. That was the vet that has the home there for guys that are coming out of addictions and things like that. And a lot of those kind of stories, they talk a lot about, as the characters are talking about it, you realize, like, oh, these are problems real people have. And get the idea, like, who do I know that's just gotten out of the service? And is there, for me anyway, it's kind of like these are real world problems that people are having. Be like if I read a book about a guy that had 5 kids, I'd go like, I know a guy with 5 kids, or the struggles of raising teenage daughters, But so I like a story with a plot like that.
I'm not there yet.
Yeah. Your time is coming.
Yeah, it is.
That's right. The second, third, and fourth best mistakes I ever made were my 3 kids. Yeah,
Best mistakes.
best mistakes. Worked out good.
You ever read the Archie Ranko series?
I don't recognize the name.
It was a Russian police detective series. Forget the author's name, but it was a really good series. Like Gorky Park was the first.
The Gorky Park name sounds familiar, so I may well.
So that's the whole series. Yeah. Wolves Eat Dogs was really good too. That's about.
But he's a Russian detective.
Yeah, but it's cool. It's like it's kind of immersive with the Russian culture, and it's interesting. But I believe it's written by, who's the author? It's a Western author, I believe.
Martin Cruz Smith.
Smith. Yeah, I have to look that up.
It's a good series.
I've read several books that are set in other cultures like that, so that's always.
Is it 2025?
Hotel Ukraine came out in 2025.
Oh, nice. So he's still making them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of series for the sake of series, where you're just like going on and on and on.
Yeah.
What's the Murder by Letters series or whatever? Right.
Yeah. V for Vendetta. Is that?
No, I think maybe they got that far, but it's the one who's like, A is for alibi.
Yeah. Yeah. So you setting up a 26-book series?
Yeah.
Or are you going to get down to AA?
Do you have enough character
the Alcoholics Anonymous?
No, we had Brad Mullen here the other day, and it's like he was 22 years on General Hospital.
Yeah.
So it's like, talk about series.
That's
like, yeah.
Talk about weaving storylines.
Storylines.
Yeah, when your characters go from being 20 years old to being grandparents all in the same series.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. How old would the Brady Bunch be now? Yeah, I don't like a series just for the sake of a series, but I think it's fun sometimes to, if you've gone to the trouble to create a character and develop him, and there are other stories you can do with the same
there's more
character,
to his story. Yeah.
That's good. But sometimes they start being the same story over and over again, and then at that point, I usually lose interest with it.
Yeah, and then
some of them are good. I think we talked about the Dune series last time. After a while, I'm just like, I'm done.
What's the difference between like episodic and serialized? And some things, episodic is actually what we're talking about, where like it's a new story each time, and the characters shift a little bit, and you have a large arc over the course of their stories. And then serialized is when you have like one big block of a story. So like Dune is more serialized, where it's like things keep changing and happening. There's no resetting status quo at any point. It's not an episode of Friends.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of series where like, since serialized stuff has gotten so popular based on like Game of Thrones and things like that, it's gotten a little out of hand as well.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you get to the point where it'd be nice to just have a reset the status quo after the story's over, and we go back to normal, and then we do a new thing, and like, rather than, because that's soap operas. Like, a lot of, take Yellowstone and series like that, they've kind of just turned into soap operas where it's just about conflict between characters. It's not about finishing a storyline.
Yeah.
Getting to the end. But a lot of people enjoy that stuff. I mean, it's really, it's entertainment. It's what
It's
you enjoy.
entertainment, yeah.
Different people enjoy different things. The Hardy Boys. I never got into the Hardy Boys.
Oh, I think I've read them.
I read all of them.
Yeah, all of them. How many are there?
I read all of them that were available when I was growing up, anyway.
They still making them?
No.
No. You know, it's amazing to me how many, like, how short-lived a lot of series actually were. Like, if you look at the original Star Trek, it was only like 3 years.
Yeah. But it seemed like it was really long.
But they had tons of episodes.
Yeah.
Original Batman, too, was like 3 years. But this is back when they were doing how many episodes a
Is it
season?
the Adam Parker Batman?
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
campy one.
Mm-hmm.
58 books on the Hardy Boys collection.
And you've read them all?
I think I've read them all. I think I've read them all while I was growing up.
Mm.
I read those. There was a Nancy Drew series, which was like the girl version of
yeah.
Hardy Boys.
I know my sister read those.
I got a series of books from my grandparents in England called The Famous Five, and it was 2 sets of brothers, sisters, and one of their friends, and they were all of age, young teenagers, and they solved the local mysteries in their local towns.
Mm.
But it's the same sort of. It's kind of a combination of the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew set in England. That was where I discovered the difference in spelling in English spelling.
Color of the U.
Why they keep putting people in the goal and why can't they spell it right? Oh, that's jail. Oh, okay.
Wait, they spell
It's
jail with a G?
Yeah, G-A-O-L.
I didn't know that.
Go to hospital.
That's just a different
G-A-O-L.
word, though.
What?
Hospital?
And why do they keep
they don't call it the hospital.
Yeah. They like going there. You're when you're was it on holiday? Yeah, you're on holiday.
go on holiday?
Yeah.
But they make fun of us saying we go to the Walmart. So
I don't say that.
I have a friend here that
I go to
says
Walmart.
they go to the Walmart. I'm like,
But sometimes I'm on the YouTubes.
yeah, on the YouTube.
Right.
But the other one that bothers me sometimes is anyways,
Anyways?
because I don't think there's supposed to be an S on the end of that word.
Anyway.
I think it's anyway.
What about fixing to?
Fixing to, that's a real word.
Because like you go to the north and people are like, you're fixing to what?
Yeah, I'm fixing to
To.
fixing to go over yonder.
Yeah. You betcha.
Yeah. Over yonder's a measurement.
Yeah. How about oofta? It's a good northern word.
Yeah.
Are you hear oofta around here?
Oofta.
Oofta.
Is that just an exclamatory?
Yeah. It's oofta. It's like
Use it in a sentence.
oofta, ma. It's generally like a one. It's like a one-word thing where it's like, "Hey, I got into a car wreck. Oofta, oofta." Like I pulled, I got a pebble in my shoe. Oofta. It has a lot of range. It's a lot of it's in the way you enunciate it, where you put your emphasis that determines how big of an oofta it is.
Okay, yeah. In Mandarin, they have a similar one. Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like oy vey. Yeah.
I mean, it can go from like someone died.
I think there's one of those in your podcast name in there.
Yeah. I think that might not be the best one. There's no, I mean, the F word is like the word that is every single form of grammar there is and can convey many things. It's a very diverse word.
Yeah, I guess the other books I read. Yeah, I would say probably most of them probably tend towards mystery stories, or they are. Then they sound both like kind of a historical fiction. Like these guys weren't really in Pearl Harbor, but it's the story of Pearl Harbor with characters. And so you can kind of pull up a little bit of the
like some alternate history.
Like
some alternate history. They start changing history.
Yeah, those are weird. I haven't read.
So for my wife for Mother's Day this year, I got captured by a social media ad that was running through, and it's these series of letters, and you can pick a different time period, and they're fictional letters, but they mail them to your house, and they're like telling of a story. The one in particular that I chose was the World War II, and it's a colonel that's writing back to his love, and she's stateside, and I think they come like every month. They'll send a new letter and update you on the story. And
Interesting.
Yeah, so I thought that was hey, they got me.
It's a good moneymaker. Like
for them,
yeah,
I would assume that they just developed 12 letters It's a year-long subscription,
Yeah.
and just develop a long
You gotta
story.
have a story embedded in there.
Yeah.
How long are these letters? Like a page or two?
About 2 pages.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
they're
600 words, 500 words.
Yeah,
Is it like an AI pen pal?
I don't know. Like that was
No,
my next
they're
question.
not-
Is AI
You don't.
writing?
You don't.
these things?
You don't
No.
respond to them.
no, you don't respond to
Oh,
them.
okay.
Yeah, no. But
You could.
you could, but I don't think anybody's listening.
Oh, they might be.
This
but
email is not monitored.
If you write them correctly, they might.
inside of them, there's also hidden messages and words that you try to figure out as well, right? So it's a little bit more interactive than that, but at the same time, telling, a retelling of a historical event through the eyes of a long lost separated couple.
Interesting.
I thought that was an interesting gift that keeps on giving, at least for a year.
Something different.
Yeah.
We read a lot of biographies too, so it's just always interesting to run into. We had a friend who back in the Oak Grove days, we had a group that went to the Philippines on a mission trip, and the guy who led that group had been a missionary in Burma. I don't know what it's called now. I think Myanmar. Yeah, had been in Burma during several of the revolutions that went on there. But
Always
he
had to me.
He had talked a lot about Adoniah Judson, who apparently had done a lot of missionary work in India and the Southeast Asia and stuff like that. And so we picked up a biography of him and then a biography of his wife, and so that kind of led us to a whole series of biographies. When I was a kid, there was a series of books called "You Were There" or "We Were There at." It was like we were there at the Battle of the Alamo. It was like two little kids at the Battle of the Alamo. We were there at the crossing of the, Washington crossing the Delaware. But then these two little kids went back into time to different events.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard of that one.
Yeah, and so I can remember reading that like probably when I was in elementary school. It was written for that kind of 4th, 5th grade kind of. There's a way to kind of introduce, a little historical events.
Our kids watch a series called Storybook, where it's these kids, it's an animated series, and they will go back to stories from the Bible. Like, so they'll have something will happen in their life that has an applicable moral, a bully or something like that at school, and they'll get taken back in time by the storybook, and then they'll go, be with David and Goliath. And
Now let me ask you, is it Storybook or Superbook?
yeah, that one, Superbook.
Okay.
My bad.
So Superbook, is it the newer version or the...
I would only know by looking at the animation.
Okay. Yeah,
The
Superbook.
newer stuff, I think. Yeah, that stuff right there.
Okay, because they have an original one back from the 90s
Oh, really?
that I grew up watching. And when my kids were young, I tried to find it, and it's super hard to find anything that wasn't copied on the internet,
You
right?
found it's hard to get your kids interested in the things that that you grew up on.
It depends.
Like our kids would never get into VeggieTales.
Really?
Yeah, and at least that I recall, they never quite cottoned onto it.
Well, yeah, but I think you and I probably grew up very similar with regards to we had a very limited amount.
Yeah, they might have too many options.
Yeah.
We need to go start smashing some TVs.
Right. Probably was very similar to Superbook. Because my kids did not latch onto it at all. Even the old one just did not. But it was done in more like a Japanese animation style.
Yeah, but then there are some timeless things they will latch onto, like where there's certain movies that are just riveting to kids, and we watch them as adults, and we're entertained maybe, but it's kind of amazing what grabs them.
All right.
Jurassic Park's one where all of our kids are riveted when they're watching. And there's only 12 minutes of dinosaurs in the whole movie. It's a 2 hour and 7 minute movie, and there's 12 minutes of dinosaurs.
That's funny.
Well,
Got big bucks.
tells a
Big
good story.
stars.
Yeah.
Is the new one out, or is it still?
Yeah,
has it come out now?
July.
I saw the first one, I think, but I don't think I saw any of the ones after that. We're not big movie buffs, so
There's only one.
there's only one real.
There's only one real one. It's like Highlander. Yeah. All right.
This cool. I enjoyed the visit.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's good.
Appreciate it.
We'll
You're gonna-
keep kicking the idea of a book
Are
club
you
around.
Yeah, book club. You gonna come back each episode and sit in the corner over there and watch us?
Oh man, there's only you guys are gluttons for punishment.
Yeah. Let Mark give you a mic over there. Mark can chime in whenever he wants to.
Yeah, that's I think my wife would say that you guys need counseling if you think that's a good idea.
Did you filter anything out this time?
I don't think it was too bad this time.
Yeah.
She did. I did been running some husband and wife jokes by her. She goes like, "That's funny. You can't tell that one." So
Why not? Come on. I think our audience can.
I told her I like the one about the husband and wife been married 10 years, and so he brought her a gift. And he said, "I brought you it's a bracelet, but I got this from my grandmother. I want you to have it." She unwrapped it and looked at it. She goes, "This beautiful gold bracelet, stone set on it." She flipped it upside down. Looked at it. She goes, "What is this DNR on here?" I said, "I think that was her initials." Terrible,
Yeah, that's terrible.
terrible.
No, we love our wives.
Absolutely.
We wouldn't be the same without them.
This my wife is torn between I married my soulmate and I can't believe I signed up for this.
So you know you're with the one.
That's right.
Yeah. All right.
All right. You have a
Thank
good week. You got a trip coming. Have a good trip
Yeah. Thank you.
in a few weeks.
All right.
Thanks a lot. See you.